Okay, good afternoon everybody, and just 1 second, Councillor Butler's dashing in.
Yeah.
Apologies, Chair.
You're good.
Thank you. Apologies, everyone.
Okay, welcome to today's meeting of the Northamptonshire Police, Fire and Crime Panel. Today's date the 4th of February, the time starts the meeting 12:34. I will start with our apologies for non-attendance and go to James.
Through you, Chair, we have apologies for non-attendance from Councillor Eddie MacDonald from North Northamptonshire Council, with Councillor Vinnie Whitrow substituting for him. Also, apologies from Councillor Emily Fedorovich, with Councillor James Towns substituting for her. And apologies from West Northamptonshire Council members, and apologies from North Northamptonshire Council member Barbara Jenny. Apologies from West Northamptonshire Council member Councillor Daniel Lister.
Thank you, James. And no other apologies received. Thank you, Councillor Butler, for your lateness apology there. Cool. Okay, notifications of requests from members of the public to address the meeting. James?
There are none, Chair.
Thank you, sir. The item number 3, today's agenda, the panel members should declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or non-statutory disclosable interests in items on this agenda that are not already listed on your register of interests. Do any members have anything to declare? Anyone present? No? Noted, thank you. So, Chair's announcements, item number 4, I will be inviting Sarah and James, so Monitoring Officer, Democratic Services Assistant Manager, to discuss some respective responsibilities of the panel and of the PFCC's office for the record. If I may, Sarah.
I'm actually going to let James start.
You may.
Thank you. Well, as set out in the Policing Protocol Order 2023, public accountability for the delivery and performance of the police service is placed into the hands of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner on behalf of their electorate. The Commissioner draws on their mandate to set and shape the strategic objectives of their force area in consultation with the Chief Constable. The Commissioner is accountable to the electorate. The Chief Constable is accountable to the Commissioner. The Police, Fire and Crime Panel within each force area is empowered to maintain a regular check and balance on the performance of the Commissioner in that context. The Chief Constable, and indeed in our case the Chief Fire Officer, is accountable to the law for the exercise of police powers and to the Commissioner for the delivery of efficient and effective policing, management of resources and expenditure by the police force. At all times, the Chief Constable, their constables and staff remain operationally independent in the service of the communities that they serve. The Police, Fire and Crime Panel provides checks and balances in relation to the performance of the Commissioner. The panel does not scrutinise the Chief Constable, it scrutinises the Commissioner's exercise of their statutory functions. Whilst the panel is there to challenge the Commissioner, it must also exercise its functions with a view to supporting the effective exercise of the Commissioner's functions. And sorry, just to clarify, the same powers in relation to scrutiny of the Commissioner concerning their responsibilities for policing apply to scrutiny of the Commissioner in relation to their responsibilities as the Fire and Rescue Authority.
Thank you, James. Sarah, do you have anything to add?
You've done
Okay.
a good job.
Well, that was concise. Okay, in which case we'll move on to item number, I had nothing further to add to announcements from the Chair. We'll move on to item number 5, the minutes of the previous meetings of the Police, Fire and Crime Panel here at Angel Square. There were meetings held as an extraordinary meeting called by members with the support of the Chair on the 27th of November, and the regular meeting is scheduled of the panel on the 4th of December to invite members to agree the minutes for accuracy. I understand, Councillor Keeble, you had a point relating to the 4th of December.
Yeah, it's just a point on the accuracy. The second point talks about drug dealing on the streets. As I recall, and I think the record would show that we talked about serious drug-related crime, and there was quite a wide discussion about what that meant, but it wasn't simply focused on drug dealing. There were issues raised about knife crime and others. So I just would appreciate if that could just reflect just the nature of the discussion.
Can you give us the chapter or point,
Yeah,
Councillor Keeble?
it's right at the end of the minutes on the 4th of December, and it comes up again actually on the business, but the business obviously, today's business refers back to the minutes, which is why the minutes just need to reflect it. That it wasn't, it's point 321.b. I think if you just do a search on drug dealing, you'll find it, or drug.
361, Councillor Keeble.
Hey?
361?
Hang on a minute. Is it 361? It's certainly...
The work programme.
No, it's before it's on the minutes. It's on the minutes for the 4th of
Yes.
December. Yeah, right at the end.
So I think...
Yeah, if we could just make sure that it reflects the nature of the debate. I did speak with you before.
Yeah, so sorry, Councillor Keeble. I think you're referring to the page 27 of the agenda pack, which is item 361.
Hang on a minute.
So there's a bullet point on the last page of those minutes that starts Northampton Town Centre's drug-related activity.
That's it. And there was a second point. There was a second recommendation there. I had it up just now, and I've just scrolled on past it.
And then there's a resolution on that item A. Panel endorses the latest version of its outline work programme subject to the addition of the following topics: the impact of street drug dealing and the action being taken to address it in Northamptonshire. So it sounds as if you want that. That's too precise. That's too narrow.
Yeah. Sorry, my thing wasn't working. What the discussion was, what we talked about was serious drug-related crime. So it wasn't just sort of, people smoking dope at home sort of thing. It was the more serious crimes, and particularly relating to knife crime, which has obviously been an issue, and I didn't want to miss out the knife crime bit of it. Yeah. So it would encompass dealing, but it's not just about the dealing. Okay.
Yeah. So understood. So rather than being as specific as the impact of street drug dealing, you're talking about the impact of serious drug-related crime, including knife crime.
Yeah.
Understood.
Thank you. I think that reflects the discussion. It's not just after the event. We had quite a debate about it.
Okay. So, yeah. So the way to proceed on those minutes then would be to for the panel to agree them, subject to the amendment of that point to convey what's just been captured, if the panel is happy with that.
Okay, I'll take any other notes beforehand and we'll just have a show of hands on that agreement to that. Is any other feedback on the minutes of the meetings that they otherwise reflect? And we just have a show of hands that we agree with Councillor Keeble's point there. Thank you. That is carried unanimously.
And is the panel also happy to agree the minutes of the 27th of November?
Yes. Again? Yep, taken. Thank you. Okay, so into the formal business of today's meeting, item number 6, the proposed police precept, and this is for you, James, to give the brief introduction, followed by the PFCC to present their report outlining the precept 2627. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the report at item 6A on the agenda is intended to set out the statutory background that applies here, the timings involved and the potential outcomes relating to scrutiny of the Commissioner's proposed police precept. And I'll highlight now that exactly the same requirements apply to scrutiny of the fire precept, which is the subsequent item on the agenda. Scrutiny of the precept is one of the panel's core statutory functions. So it's absolutely set out in legislation that before the Commissioner can set a precept, they must notify the panel of the precept they're proposing. The panel must review the proposed precept and send a report to the Commissioner with its conclusions. Those conclusions are essentially a question of the panel supporting the proposed precept or making recommendations on it. And in this case, the panel also does have the power to veto a proposed precept, which is an absolute veto. If the panel reaches that conclusion, the Commissioner is prevented from issuing the precept and must come back with a revised precept. The important proviso there is that the veto must be agreed by a majority of 2/3 of the members of the panel, and that is the members of the panel, not the members who are present at the meeting when this scrutiny is carried out. So in the case of our panel, that would require a minimum of 9 of 13 panel members to agree a veto for that to go ahead. If the panel makes a report and makes recommendations on the precept, the Commissioner must have regard to those recommendations and must give the panel a response to its report. Commissioner may then proceed to issue the precept. If there is a veto, then there is a further round of scrutiny of a revised proposed precept put forward by the Commissioner, which is the reason why we have the reserve meeting in the schedule for 18th of February. As I say, Chair, the report is intended to set out the statutory background, why the panel is here, what it needs to do, how it should go about doing it. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay. Any questions for James before we invite the Commissioner to present the report? No questions. Over to you, Commissioner's office.
Lovely, thank you very much, Chair. I'm going to introduce this item, but actually it's the 151 officers show, isn't it? Vaughan will take you through all the figures around the precepting. What I wanted to do, though, is have an opportunity to say to the panel that I really thank the finance team for all the work that they've done. It's been a really difficult journey because the figures kept changing and we still don't have all the final things that we need to put everything into place. So they've had to work really, really hard as the landscape kept changing. And, you know, I really do wish the government would conclude its business a bit faster and a bit quicker so that we could do our work in a much more timely way. And I also, you know, hope that we reach a stage where we get 3-year funding instead of just 1 year, because it would help future planning, wouldn't it? So I want to thank the finance team for all the work that they've done. I also want to thank the comms team. For me, it's really, really important that people understand that they are being invited to respond to our precept offer, if you can put it like that. And, you know, it's really important for me to understand what the public is thinking and what the public is feeling. Getting people to respond to consultations is really, really hard work. I'm sure you found that in the local authorities as well. So the comms team has gone full out to try and up the numbers around our consultation. And this year they've achieved a 26.7% increase in responses. That was a huge amount of hard work, so I thank them very, very much indeed for that. I also want to thank all our partners because, as you know, keeping communities safe isn't just a policing matter and isn't just a fire and rescue service matter. It involves all of us. So there's been a huge amount of partnership working going on in the course of the year and is planned for the next year as well. So I want to thank all our partners. Just a little bit of context. We are presenting these budgets to you and the proposals for the precepts to you in a context where policing and fire has been seriously disinvested in over the years of austerity. So please do bear that in mind. We've also have an issue which is about the way the county council froze the council tax And that had a huge impact and has had a cumulative impact over the years on your base budgets and my base budgets, particularly impacting the fire and rescue service, because that was part of the county council at that time. So we are now in a position with fire where we have the lowest precept in the country, I think. Is it the lowest, Vaughan? And the fire and rescue service is in a particularly difficult time. So we've had 10 commissioners in the country asking and being granted flexibility for the policing precept because of the financial state of their forces. We haven't done that because we think the police, although it's not a great budget, it's a manageable budget. But we have asked for flexibility in the fire one because our conclusions when we've looked at the risks, the demand and the budget is that it's not manageable and we need more money than a £5 precept would give us. MHCLG, we asked it at MHCLG for £12 precept. They've come back and said they would agree to £10, which is fine, we can manage with that. We can't assure you that we can do that today because we're still waiting to get an agreement back from the Treasury and they've got to agree with MHCLG on that one. So we are the only fire authority in the country that's applied for that flexibility, but it is because we are in a really, really difficult position. And if we don't get more money, there will have to be some really serious cuts, which will impact on the risks to people in the county and the service that they can expect. So I just need you to be fully aware of that. There's a couple of other things I wanted to just throw in, actually. One of the things that we look at when we're building the budgets and when we are going out to tender or we're commissioning work is added social value. Now, all of us, all public authorities, have got a duty under the 2012 Social Value Act to consider added social value. I just need you to know we take that really, really seriously with all our budgets. And what we're looking to do is keep as much of the Northamptonshire pound in Northamptonshire. So we're looking to use local suppliers and local agencies. It's not always possible, but that is what we are trying to do. And in that regard, I've got a suggestion to make because all public bodies have got a duty to show and demonstrate added social value. It might be, Chair, at some point, it might be a good idea for all our finance leads to get together and consider how we can work with each other to complement what we're doing in terms of added social value for the benefit of the communities, because there is a benefit to scaling up what we do and that kind of collaboration. And I know it does go on in other places. So I'll just leave that with you. And I know the university is very interested in doing that. So I'll just leave that with you to consider. I also wanted to point out, in terms of value for money, one of the indicators for me that we're doing quite a good job is the number of people who are willing to volunteer in policing. So I know you've got on your work programme Citizens in Policing. I'm really pleased about that because I think people who do spend hours and hours and hours of their own time supporting our police and helping our communities keep safe, they need to be recognised. And I'm really pleased that recently the Guardians have won the King's Award, and they've just, over the last year, they've clocked up 5,000 voluntary hours. I think that is absolutely amazing. And that's just one element of Citizens in Policing, so I'm really pleased about that. An awful lot of what we do to keep communities safe is about multi-agency and partnership working. I just wanted to reference for you the work of the Sunflower Centre. The Sunflower Centre looks after people who are the victims of serious and sexual violence. Their caseload this morning was 585 people. That is huge. That is such a big increase in what we're seeing in terms of violence. 91 of those cases came in last week. 95% of those cases are women, and nearly all of those cases are white women, which shows me, and it'll show you, that there's serious underreporting of these kind of crimes in marginalised communities, and it's something that my office will be addressing in the course of the year. But these are really, really serious figures. And the reports I get from the Sunflower Centre are telling me that the level of violence being experienced, particularly by women, has escalated. So they're dealing with 2 cases of women being assaulted with hammers this week. So the level of the violence has gone up and the numbers have gone up. We couldn't provide that service on our own. So this is a multi-agency group partnership project, service that we provide. It's a really, really essential one. I just needed you to know that we're all really, really pleased that we've got a strong partnership around there. But the work that they're doing is absolutely crucial. So thank you to all the partners for that. And I'm going to hand over to Vaughan. Is that okay? Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel. Vaughan?
Thank you. So I'll be relatively brief with this because I appreciate that a lot of you have already seen some of this before. I'm really grateful for those of you who were able to come to the workshop that we ran to go through some of the detail on this. Hope you found that valuable. The police precept first then. The proposal is to increase the precept by £15. That takes the Band D...
No, I'm not on there. I think we need to do the items separately. They are agendaed as police and fire separately on the...
Yes, I'm doing police.
Yeah. Do you want to... No, okay.
Yeah, sorry, that's what... So I'm just talking about police first. So police is a £15 proposal to increase the Band D precept to £335.04, which is an increase of around 29p per week. We received the provisional financial settlement just before Christmas. It was a disappointing settlement across the sector, both in terms of the figures that were presented to us and also the level of detail that went with those figures. There was some concerns, quite rightly, from colleagues across the country that the amount of detail provided with the settlement made life very difficult for the likes of myself, trying to unpick exactly what we were expected to glean from that. We received some more clarity middle of January, which included some additional funding that was due to be provided for neighbourhood policing. Again, it required some significant unpicking, and once we got to the bottom of that, we then had a more rounded picture of what it meant for Northamptonshire, significantly lower than what we're expecting and what we gleaned from the original spending review. As part of the spending review, we expected the precept referendum limit to be £14. As it turns out, it's £15, which, in our view, is essential to keep services running. There's an expectation implied within the funding settlement that all forces and commissioners increase their precepts by the maximum permitted. The report includes details of both the Chief Constable's budget and also the Commissioner's budgets. And within the appendices, there is the medium-term financial plan and also the reserve strategy. I won't go into the detail of those, but invite you to ask questions about the matters that you've kind of want to ask about within the report. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I will open the questions to the floor. Any takers first? Andy Frost.
Yeah, I've just got one question, and it's the same question for both budgets. And so the police one, you talk about a 1% reduction in the council tax, equaling so £1 reduction. So instead of 15, if we went to 40, that's £0.27 million. What I don't get from the report, and I don't understand, is if I'm a member of the public, if I pay you £14 instead of £15, what am I not going to get for that £1? Am I not going to see my PCSOs? Am I not going to get my phone answered in a certain... I've got no idea what the impact on services is by the £1 reduction, if that makes sense. And that's for both. My comment is the same for both reports.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So within any of these options, there is a savings requirement across all the services. And when we do the medium-term financial planning, we know these things are coming down the line, and we make best assumptions about what they're going to be. So this time last year, we came with a precept proposal and a medium-term financial plan, and we could see in that medium-term financial plan then there were savings to be made. The level of savings will depend on what the funding is for that particular year and what the precept increase and council tax base increase is for that particular year. How those savings are achieved is a matter for the Chief Constable, because the Chief Constable and the force need to police the county in the optimal way. That is not for us to say. As much as the Commissioner will scrutinise what the Chief is doing, operational matters remain with the Chief. There's no easy answer as to what that £260,000, £270,000 would give or not give. The fact is, if the more of a savings gap there is, the more savings need to be made, and the Chief needs to find ways of doing that. And if the Chief is exhausted taking those savings from non-pay budgets, efficiencies, staff posts, then the Chief would be forced to alter recruitment of police officers to take those down. There isn't a straightforward answer to your question, I'm afraid, but the more savings need to be made, the more difficult the decisions are.
Could I just add a comment there, Chair? For me as the Commissioner, looking forward to what policing really needs, I found this budget really difficult. For me, it's a maintenance budget. This is keeping the status quo. It's not, we haven't got enough money to do exciting work that really needs to be done, considering AI and things like that. We do need to do it at some time in the future because it will help take pressure off demand and pressure off the officers. So for me, this is like a status quo. You are going to get the next year what you've got last year. That's what it is. If we have to tell the Chief to make even more savings, that is going to seriously cut the resource that he's got available, which means we will get a lesser service this coming year than we did last year.
And just to put that into a context, I suppose, section 77 of the report, which shows the Chief Constable's budget, that's on page 45, that shows the cost of all the elements of the Chief Constable's budget broken down, and ultimately a savings target that is required of £3.5 million. That's on top of the almost £3.5 million that the Chief Constable had to find last year. So any difference in funding or indeed precept will exacerbate that problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Next, Councillor Dr. Coos was first, and Councillor Kellett.
Thank you. Thanks, Vaughan. Thank you for the papers, really detailed as always, and thank you for the session and talking that through. I just want to talk about, so on page 35 and 36, when we talk about the precept and you talk about consideration of the factors outlined, and I get all of that, but then you follow that through, and underneath there's lots of really good proposals for the precept proposal, and I appreciate the Commissioner now saying this is almost like a status quo, because you follow it through by saying even after taking into account the maximum precept increase, there's still a significant savings requirement. So it's almost like an oxymoron, isn't it? We want to increase it because we want to do this, but actually we've still got to make savings. So it's kind of and thank you for the Commissioner for saying that it is a status, but it is keeping things as they are, really, isn't it? So my concern would be then is, and I've said this before, if the savings that are currently in aren't achieved, some of these proposals under what you're going to use some of the precept for would have to stop, maybe?
And that's the stark reality of it. It would come to a prioritisation of which of those things are absolutely necessary and which things aren't. And we have the same problem every year in that the funding is never enough. But what you don't want to do is stop growing and stop developing and stop that innovative work. So you have to make a tough decision to invest here, but take money away from here based on the priorities. And that's partly or entirely why the police, fire and crime plan is there, because that clarifies what the priorities are and where the focus should be.
Thank you, that's helpful, and I think that's helpful for the public to hear that actually, even though with the precept it's still tough and you've still got savings to make, and if we're going to try to maintain what currently as is, then, you know, I mean, unless you get, as you said, a 3-year budget with lots of investment, then it's going to be still be tough, isn't it? So I think that's fair to say. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
It's also important to bear in mind that a lot of what my office does is to try and take pressure off policing, which is why our partnerships, multi-agency working, and the initiatives that come out of my office around protection and prevention are really, really, really important. And, you know, you will see from the information I've given you today and in the newsletter that we're working flat out to make sure that we have those kind of impacts. We really, really want to help reduce demand on the force.
Thank you. Councillor Kellett.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. We've got some high-profile cases coming up in Northamptonshire at the moment. What impact does the legal costs and civil claims have an impact on the precept? And have we got any figures what we're getting in sort of legal costs and civil cases brought in against Northamptonshire Police?
So the force always has a list of legal cases that are ongoing all the time, and it's something that the force budgets for on a day-to-day basis, as any police force does. Obviously, there's ones that have been very well known that you're talking about that obviously are higher than others. The force will make provision within its existing budget for those kind of things, and there are insurance policies to cover those as well. So once there is a policy excess that needs to be met by the force, and that's what's provided for in the budget. You'll also see in the reserve strategy there is an insurance reserve which is specifically put aside for things like that, which aims to smooth the impact of anything that is out of the ordinary and prevent the precept directly being used to fund those kind of issues. Does that help?
Can I add a point?
Go for it, Johnny.
Sorry, just to add a point on the legal side, one of the current innovations is that we're coming out of regional legal service, and the intended result is that we'll have something that's both cheaper but fundamentally better for the county, closer to Northamptonshire, closer to our needs and better business for us, which compared with the service that was covering everywhere up to Lincolnshire, Derbyshire and you know, beyond, is I think going to be a better service as well as a cheaper one. So even where we're finding efficiencies, we can also in some cases find improvements in terms of quality and that localism.
Sounds to your question, Councillor Kellett. Yeah, please.
So civil cases and legal costs are not having any impact on the precept whatsoever. Okay, is that what you're saying?
Well, clearly, it depends how the budget is all kind of one big thing. So if you, in a purist sense, yes, it's always going to have an impact, because if we didn't spend the precept increase on that, we could spend it on something else. But the point is that we budget ahead of time and we have assumptions built in so that we always know what's coming and we're financially resilient.
Would you be able to send me the figures of what the impact is on that then, please?
For all
the budget, the civil cases and legal costs, would I be able to see the figures, or would you be able to send the figures?
Well, I suppose the best way of seeing that, if you look in our reserve strategy,
okay,
on page, that's in the appendix, you'll see how much we have put aside for those cases, and that's based on a worst case valuation of our legal and civil cases. And within the report, that adds to £1.9 million.
1.9 million?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Whitrow, you raised your hand. And then Pauline.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. The last comments from my colleague, do concern me, because I know that due to the ongoing things that have been out in the press and other things, it's going to cost the people of Northamptonshire millions. And we're not talking about some of the figures that were banded out in the press. I've spoke to my communities about what's going on. There is very little faith in the police. The contempt of court, it was pointed out to me that if they have insurance, there's a good chance that the contempt of court will not null and valid any insurance that is out there, because it's down to the incompetence. Or
Councillor Whitrow, I'm going to have to intervene, I'm afraid. Monitoring officer.
It's really important that we don't stray into specifics of individual cases.
No, I apologise. The only thing I will say, on speaking to my constituents, they would be happy to pay the increase. However, that comes with a price, and that would be the resignation of both the Chief Constable and the Police and Crimes Officer. Thank you very much.
I'm going to say that's not up for discussion. What we're talking about is the budget, and I think it's important that we focus solely on that particular point. And obviously, that's not within the remit of this panel either. So that's
then
fine.
we're not. I'm not backing the paying of £15 to pay for other people's mistakes by my constituents. Thank you very much.
Miss Woodhouse.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for the report, which was very detailed and very straightforward. But at the same time, each year we sit at these precept meetings and we talk about the fact that around the inequity of fairer funding, and the fact that central government is not actually kind of moving forward in terms of improving that. Okay, so I understand all that, and I understand all the hard work, but it seems each year it's the public's purse and local authorities who are being pressured in terms of being able to support the shortfall that we're not getting from central funding. We had the uplift programme for the officers, and I think I asked a question in the past where once that funding around the uplift has been granted and we had enough police officers in place, who is going to be paying for the upkeep of keeping the numbers of police officers that we've got on the street? And it seems to me it's around local people in terms of their council tax payment, local authority in terms of the collection of those payments. And for me to sit here from when you look at the unemployment rate, when you look at the economical climate, okay, I'm not saying all the services deserve the funding that's required in terms of keeping the people safe, but it is, I cannot say I can sit here and feel that, yes, it's been agreed that it's okay to raise the precept charge to £15, knowing that there are people who are in crisis locally, right? And some communities, like your constituency, I'm not sure which area you're from, it may be a wealthier area, but we're talking about low income, we're talking about people who are on unemployed. You know, how people are already in debt, people are already struggling to feed their families. So I find it difficult when I sit here and I hear that it's going to be increased by £15. So I don't know what assurance, outside of what I've read in the report, in terms of people understanding, but that's also a bigger drain on our local services as well, such as the court systems, the debt collections, this, that and the other. So is it possible as a force area that we can look at maybe how we deal with, you know, because you've got non-payment of council tax, for example, you've got bailiffs, all this lot involved. We talk about partnership working. Is there a way of looking at how we, I guess, kind of work in partnership to alleviate maybe some of the burdens that are going to be coming through from the courts, that kind of thing? So those are the kind of things I think I'd like to see in reality being given consideration when we're talking about. We know we've got agencies like Community Law Services that support people. We've got Citizen Advice Bureau, but at the same time, are they working close enough to support people to understand? Because people are in panic when they're hearing that actually, you know, police precepts are going to be raising £15 extra, and then we've also got the fire. Talk to us about it. How do you assure the public that it's worth it? It's worth.
Poverty and inequality in our communities is a really serious matter, and it is shameful that we have got so many children living in poverty, and shameful that we have got so many families struggling. But I'm really proud that the Labour government is doing lots and lots of things to address those matters, and that people will be, from this year on, feeling the benefit of, you know, the 2-child limit stopping, wages going up, and all those things. And we have to bear in mind that we're talking about Band D. You know, so if you're Band A, Band B, Band C, your council precept will be much lower. And it is regrettable that no government has yet fixed fairer funding, but the government has promised that they will be looking at it, not this year, but next year. So I am hopeful that we will see movement there.
Okay.
But it is true that our communities will start to feel an improvement in their living arrangements.
Councillor Sims was first, followed by Councillor Towns. Councillor Sims.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just a question I wanted to ask, really picking up on something Danielle spoke about earlier, and as one of the councillors that was being threatened with removal from the committee, I just thought I'd get a question in before that actually happened. I was really interested, preset aside and everything else, you were talking about local supply of services and the social values. I wonder how that's measured in terms of the percentage of spend, either on services or equipment and so on and so forth, and how, if it isn't, how that could be set up in the future so we could understand in a fairly simple KPI way on what we do invest locally, how we invest that, as a percentage of spend, because I think we are local. Local is important. You know, keep that pound within our own areas is critical. I just wonder, it's one of those things that's very easily said, but it's actually quite difficult to administer and then show progress.
Very good question, and it's a question I have asked the teams often, and we are expecting them to do some of that work. So I know WNC, for example, belongs to a national social added social value framework that does the number crunching for them. We belong to something called Blue Light Commercial, don't we, that does those number crunching for us. It's really difficult to prove, and you're absolutely right, but I have required people to give me the evidence, and so I'll be really pleased to be able to report on that at some point in the future. For me, it's really, really important. What's even more important is that people know when they're going into the commissioning or tendering process, that is a requirement, and it is something that we ask about all the time. If you're buying from over there, why aren't you buying from over here? Those are the questions, aren't they? And I am quite determined we will keep as much of our money in the county as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Councillor Towns.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it relates to police officer numbers, and I note that there's also the PCSOs and special constables, but we seem to be just treading water with the number and holding those steady in Northamptonshire when we've got a growing population. Northamptonshire is growing sort of twice the national average, which is a bit concerning. But my point relates to the concern over the churn rate. Item 82 relating to police recruitment. Filling these posts has become increasingly challenging over the last 18 months with smaller pools of applicants, higher attrition and more failing the high standards of vetting required. There has also been a focus on high ethical standards, challenging those officers who do not portray the behaviours expected of them, which results in more leavers following misconduct procedures. So we seem to have a smaller pool of applicants coming forward. I'm just wondering, is there sufficient training with allowance within the budget to change mindsets where it might be required and give officers a greater understanding of perhaps communities around them and their own well-being to keep them in the force?
Officer wellbeing is a really a big priority for me, and I'm really pleased that since I came in to the role, our occupational health arrangements have improved significantly, and we've invested quite a lot in that. The Deputy Commissioner and I spend a huge amount of our time going out into communities talking about all the different opportunities there are, both in policing and in fire, encouraging people to think about futures in the force. And actually, I think we've got a full complement of recruits coming through at the minute, haven't we? And the government has just put an additional requirement on us to recruit an additional 17 neighbourhood police. From my point of view, the things I worry about is the level of demand on the frontline response. So again, you know, the more we can work with partners to reduce that demand, so the police officers can prioritise what they're doing, the better it is. And I'm very, very happy, and people in my office are very, very happy to come out to town councils, to parish councils, to community organisations to help think through how we can help ease some of that pressure by doing things around policing. Obviously, we're not going to do the policing bit, but we can turn the lights on, we can cut bushes back, we can put in help points in the parks, we can encourage people to do speed watch and neighbourhood watch, and all those things really, really do make a difference. So we can encourage people to do that.
Thank you. Councillor
Kellett. Just a comment you made, Danielle, about the Labour government trying to take people out of poverty. The settlements what the councils are getting at the moment from this government are terrible, and they're actually putting people into poverty. It's affecting what we can actually do as councils. So I didn't think this panel was political, but when you say that, you're making it political. Thank you very much.
Councillor Keeble, I'll give Danielle a right of reply, and then, if I may, take your question.
I used to get the annual figures for children and families living in poverty, Councillor Kellett. I'd be very pleased to receive those figures from both the councils. It would be really, really helpful. I know you do keep the figures, and it would be really helpful if you could share that with my office.
I can speak as the leader of WNC and offer that to you, Commissioner. Councillor Keeble, to a point.
Thank you. I just want to rebut that about the comments that you've made. I mean, the Commissioner actually criticised the government for the police settlement. You're criticising for the general settlements. The government has overall been criticised by opposition parties for increasing taxes and increasing spending. For the record, the money has gone into removing the two-child cap on benefits. It's increased funding in social housing, in pothole repairs, and a whole range of priority issues for the public. It has also produced a fairer funding settlement, which has benefited councils up and down the country. So I think in terms of looking at where the needs are, the government has redressed many of the historic inequalities. This isn't the place for a big debate, but I just want to put that on the record.
Thanks, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Kellett.
I totally agree with Sally. We shouldn't be having a political debate over the government. This should be down to what we're here to discuss, the budgets and stuff like that. But obviously, I didn't bring the government into it. So thank you very much.
Dr. Coos.
Thank you. So I'm going to bring us back to budget here. So on page, what page am I on? I've lost the page. 71, you talk about, and we've had this conversation before, and I think I raised it with you, about balancing the annual budget by drawing down on general reserves. Now, when there's overspends, I get that. So last year, did you not have to draw down because some of the savings weren't met? So we had to use reserves then, if I recall. Yeah. So that leads me, and I keep saying this, and I know it's really tough, I really do. But the concern then is about the savings proposals, because if they're not making the savings proposals, and you're going to have to use reserves to balance the budget, you're going to be on this cycle, aren't you? And I know I've been there myself because I worked in government a long time. So my question is, are these savings the right ones? Are they achievable? Is there something else? Because just follow on from that, what I did notice on page 86, you've had no 106 contributions at all. Nothing. And I find that astonishing, the amount of building and development that's going off in Northamptonshire, that you have had nothing, zilch, 106 development monies. And I think that's something, Chair, that needs to probably be looked at some point, because I think there should be something coming in. The amount of buildings that are going up, the increasing population, would suggest there would be some money coming into the service to enable police and fire to actually increase. So I think I'd like to, I think if I could
I'll answer that one, and Vaughan may want to come in as well. Thank you for raising that. It's a really serious concern of mine, and I've raised it here before, haven't I? It is something that we are taking to the Police Accountability Board, because I am not satisfied at all, you know, that we have had all this huge development and we've not got any SIL money or any 106 money. One of the issues, I don't know if it's affecting police, but one of the issues for the local authorities is when the unitaries were formed, all the local intelligence about 106 monies, where it's sat, the monitoring officer will know this story very, very well, got lost. And I know that in the local authorities, a huge amount of work has been undertaken by the finance teams to find out exactly where those 106 monies are, what they relate to, and how it can be drawn down. Where the local authorities have got to in that investigation is unclear to me, but I don't know if that has had any impact on the policing context either, but it is something I will be scrutinising, so thank you for that.
I'll just come in at that point and probably can offer some clarity. There is a huge piece of work being undertaken in this council at West Northants for the rationalisation and reconciliation of what funds have been received that are in the bank, what's owed, where it should come from, and that's expected to be concluded by the end of the year. So I couldn't offer any value to say whether it's been affected or not, or how much, if at all, but we should have clarity by December. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. I had a meeting recently with a major developer in Northamptonshire that's doing some considerable work. I won't name them, but I'm happy to disclose it if need be. One of the individuals, quite a senior individual, told me that he was concerned, as was his organisation, about the hundreds of thousands, tens of millions actually, of pounds that were not drawn down by a variety of councils from Section 106 funds. That, to me, as an ex-detective and investigator, concerns me slightly. Understatement of the year. So I'm just intrigued to know at some point whether that can be drilled down on, and whether, Chair, whether that project we're talking about internally at WNC might get to the root cause and reason. It's just a question to put out there, really. Very challenging times.
I can add to that before getting some clarity from Sarah. So obviously West Northampton was born out of the borough, Northampton Borough, South Northampton, Daventry, and a pooling of that, of all their different departments in planning. But Sarah, can you add to that? value.
Just to say that absolutely, you know, there is this big piece of rationalisation ongoing. We do recognise the situation in terms of, you know, the different boroughs, etc., and pulling all that information together to ensure that we have that really comprehensive understanding of exactly what money we are holding and actually where it can be used and applied, etc. Now, that's not to say that money isn't being applied from Section 106 funds. It clearly is, but actually we need to ensure that we are making use of every pound, of every penny that we have in those developer contributions for the benefit of the residents and the benefit of the area. So that is something that planning are working very hard on alongside our finance team. Thank you.
Hopefully that answers your query.
Yes, thank you.
Any other members to speak? Councillor Towns again? Yeah, I've got some comments at the end.
Yes, just on the visibility of Section 106 monies, Northamptonshire Council are in the process of giving greater visibility to that as well. It's been questioned in the council meeting, so hopefully that will be coming through too, and it'll be clearer for everybody to understand where that money is.
Excellent, thank you for that. Councillor Butler, do you have anything before if not, sum up? So, okay. I'm just going to add a couple of bits on from my side as a regular panel member. Consultations obviously yielded a good response. I might confer with the Commissioner at another occasion on how you might increase the participation, given our budget consultation in West Northampton is rapidly approaching 3,000 participants and a 600% increase on participation the previous year. That might be for making difficult choices, but we're in that forum to discuss the very same thing today. From talking to residents on the street and in the community parish meetings around the budget that we've set here, and again percentage increases of what's palatable to people, I think it comes down from what I hear daily to best value. Are we getting value for money? Are we getting what we deserve for every pound spent? Every pound earned is taxed. Somewhere there's a tax on every pound that we spend in some form. So if this is the pound that's going into the council tax, and that £15, I think it goes back to what we've heard around from the room from members. Are the provisions we're putting in, we've heard some contributions around what we must put aside for trouble and problems and maybe unforeseen problems. Is it enough? And if we did a real reality check of exactly what money do we need to make this, but is £15 what could you get for 20 is a question I hear. If it was a little bit more, do we get even more value for that, or are we just kind of going to spend it for the sake of it? And the same things come in council tax. You know, people dispute the 4.99 proposed rise in West Northampton of what they get for their money. We know what inflation sits at today. We know what our statutory services baseline is, and we know that that's increasing exponentially. Is to see what comes for the future. But I think, you know, our job's about transparency and accountability and making sure that for every pound spent there's justification for it. And if we can't deliver that residents, we should tell them. And I think from my side in this authority, that's what we've been doing. Clearly, our noise of the day is potholes, and the figure that we would need to fix all of our potholes in the county is quite stark. It would make the services our roads policing teams are driving on much safer, and therefore probably cost less damage to police cars. I've seen that in consultation responses as well. I'm sure they're affected as much as every other road user. But from what I've seen, I have nothing further to add than the other members around the room. But I think value and best value, and that if we remain focused, combined objectives are the same. That's it for me. If there's any other members to comment. Carolyn? Yeah.
Sorry, Vaughan, just a quick question. I think page 49, the serious violence duty grant has still not been confirmed. Has that been confirmed yet?
Yes, it has.
Because it's a good service, and yeah, so it has.
It has, and it's exactly the same figure we had the previous year.
Okay, well, at least you've got it. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just ask James to summarise the report item before we conclude.
So yeah, Chairman, there's clearly been a good discussion from the panel. A number of individual panel members have given comments, raised points about risks relating to the budget, things that they want the budget to address. Really, the task now for the panel is to reach a collective conclusion about the conclusion, the recommendations it wishes to reach on the Commissioner's proposed precept. As I said earlier, and as it sets out in the background report, you know, you have the options of supporting the precept, making recommendations on the precept, or if sufficient members agreed to go in that direction, vetoing the precept. It's for the panel to decide what its conclusion is.
Ms Woodhouse.
Can I just ask a quick question before we move to vote on the precept? So we're proposing a precept amount of £15, okay? That's based on the fact that you haven't had all the funding information in it yet, and I appreciate that we normally come to these meetings earlier than you getting all the figures in place. But I wondered, is there any wriggle room in terms of, if, for example, we agreed the precept amount of £15 today, if the meeting members did, once you've had all your figures, are you then able to lessen, if necessary, the amount that we've agreed, or not?
If I could just come in and just... I'm sorry if it wasn't clear.
Yeah.
In the police funding, we have had all of the figures now.
Right.
These aren't going to change now.
Right, okay.
So that question isn't relevant for police, but you might want to ask it again when we go on to the next agenda item.
Right, okay, I missed that, I'm sorry. So it's for the, yeah.
Okay. So on that, I'll put the question to the panel that we are approving the recommended £15 precept for the police on that basis of discussion.
Chair, sorry, just at the risk of getting a bit into semantics, the panel might say that it supports the precept, it might say that it endorses the precept. It's for the Commissioner to set the precept.
Yep.
I'll take that correction. Do we endorse, as a panel, do we endorse the precept at £15? And with a show of hands from members.
6, 7 endorse. Against. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm abstaining.
Abstentions, 1. So that is the panel saying it endorses.
So the panel endorses the precept for the notes, for the minutes. Thank you.
And so just for members' information, the standard practice now is that a report that summarises the discussion at this meeting, sets out the conclusion, is drafted. That's circulated to the chair and deputy for them to approve that it reflects the meeting. That then has to be sent to the Commissioner by the end of the 8th of February, which in this case is a Sunday, so in effect by the end of this working week. So there is a very tight turnaround on that, thanks to the statutory deadlines.
Okay, and we will now move on to item number 7 on today's agenda, the proposed fire precepts. And James, do you introduce this one?
The process, the timings, the outcomes are exactly the same as for the police precept. So if members have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Okay, over to Vaughan.
Thank you. So the fire precept, a slightly different position to what we're in on the police side. So the proposal here, to be clear, is to increase the precept by the maximum allowable by up to £12 for a Band D property. The current precept referendum limit for fire set nationally is £5, and the Commissioner has written to the Ministry to request this to be increased. As Danielle said, we're the only fire service to have done this. In police, there were around 9 or 10 commissioners requesting to increase the precept for policing. If I can draw your attention to the graphs early on in the report, on page 98 and 99, you can see in general why we felt that this needed to happen. So Northamptonshire with a £5 increase, if that was in line with all the other fire authorities, we would still have the second lowest brandy precept in the country. At £12, we would still only have the 7th lowest precept in the country, still well below the national average. It's a good thing that our taxpayers pay less for a service, especially when it's a good service. But the fact remains that it means that the funding for Northamptonshire Fire is far less per member of the population than most other places. In paragraph 40, you can see, based on £5 precept for all, our core spending power per resident, so that's per divided by population, is the lowest by some degree in the country at £45.31. And even at a £12 increase, we would still be third lowest. So it means that every member of the public within Northamptonshire gets a lesser service, in effect, for their money. So that is the essence of what we're doing. Now, we've been told by government that a decision on precept flexibility will be made official when the final settlement is laid, and that is expected next week. We have been given an informal heads up that it may be £10, but we don't know for certain. We were told that we would be written to early this week. It is now Wednesday and it's after 12 o'clock, so it's not now early this week. I was hoping it this morning. So the most it would be increasing by is £12. And the least we would request is £5. The fair funding review across local government was welcome, and that means that our funding formula was updated for population, which is what we've been asking for in police for many years, and what Pauline mentioned earlier. However, the difference for fire is that a very small proportion of the funding actually comes from government grant in fire compared to that in policing. So over 60% of the funding in fire comes from the taxpayer, and then quite a decent proportion from business rates. So whilst we are quoted as one of the winners in the fair funding review, meaning that there are 12 fire authorities who've done reasonably well out of it. It hasn't made an awful lot of difference to our funding position, unfortunately. Are open for questions.
Who would like to go first?
So in light of the question that I asked you prior to jumping the gun, can you answer that now, please?
So just to clarify, your question was about if there is a change to the funding, will this decision be different?
Yeah.
So obviously there is a deadline that we have to meet legally in which to set the precept and to inform the local authorities of what that precept will be. So so in any case, we will be beholden to the decision in today's meeting. At the very least, if we're just talking about the precept part of the funding, at the very least, we would be asking for £5. £5 is not enough to keep the service as it is now. We would be looking at, the Chief Fire Officer is looking at many ways to make the savings that would be required to keep the service as it is now with £5, and that would be difficult. At £7.50, it would be better. At £10, it would be better still, and at £12, it gives us a fighting chance. Now, what I've tried to articulate in the paper, that we knew this cliff edge was coming. We just didn't know how far we'd be falling off the cliff, if that's the right way of saying it. So there's already a lot of work being done in the fire service to make savings and balance the budget, because the medium-term financial plan, based on assumptions, we know there's challenging times ahead. The service has already made a lot of savings, efficiencies becoming as lean as they can without impacting frontline delivery and the service that the public actually see. The size of the organisation is such that there's a limit to what those savings can look like. So back to your question, and I'm sorry for going around in circles, I don't think this would change regardless. It would just mean that the savings figure would be higher or lower.
I think it's good to hear, though, thank you for that. There's some recognition around the funding, and there's some changes, a bit of progress on that anyway. Doesn't make any difference for us locally, but, you know, something's better than nothing. So, well done.
Thank you, Ms Wells. Thank you, Vaughan. Any questions?
Could I just come in there, please, Chair? I do think we're in quite a serious position, you know, and fire, you know, works on in terms of risk. The risks in our county are increasing in terms of flooding and wildfires. But our fire service also is called out to support other fire services when terrible, terrible things happen on their patch as well. So, for example, there were enormous wildfires in North Yorkshire, and other crews were called out to support them. There was terrible flooding in other parts of the country, and now, you know, we perform a national role as well as a local one. My fear is if we don't get the £10, that there will be severe cuts in our fire service, and that will have implications in terms of the risks to our community, but further on from that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone? Carolyn?
Vaughan, can I just ask, in the firefighter numbers, how many of those are retained? Because you've got quite a... do you know? If you don't know it offhand. Is it?
Yeah, there's around just over 250 whole-time firefighters, and I think we've established at about 180 retained.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if all of those posts are filled, and
Yeah.
that is... all of the numbers of those kind of things are the kind of things that are being looked at with the bigger review of what the need is and what kind of firefighters are needed in each area.
Yeah, because looking at your Appendix B, the MTFP, with the £12 preset on, it's still, I mean, I read through this, and I must admit, out of the two, the fire worries me the most, because I think it's so underfunded that you're on the cliff edge here, you really, truly are. And the fact that then there's savings requirements of, well, quite substantial over the next 5 years is also extremely worrying. And again, no 106 monies. Nothing, zilch, zero, which I just, you know, find
as far as we know.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for that, but I just wanted to check with the retained bit. But, yeah, because you usually get quite a lot in the rural areas, don't you, on retained, so, yeah. Thank you.
Councillor Callett?
Yeah, I totally agree with Danielle. The fire service is a Cinderella service. It's been underfunded, under budgeted for many years, and I'd fully recommend any increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Keller. I was going to say it might be sensible for members and also for the record if Chief Executive might be offered some information about the difference between a crime panel that provisions the precept and a normal county council or other council that actually manages the fire service within, if there's anything you could summarise. Would that be of any help?
Do you mean in terms of other areas looking for this level of flexibility?
Yeah.
So we're the only area that's looking for flexibility on precept when it comes to the fire service. As the Commissioner's noted on policing, there's a quarter or so of services that have asked for or secured that flexibility, but there's not a comparable council to look to here. I think Vaughan's probably run through the detail of the decision that's being asked of you today, and the fact that it is sort of on two eventualities, as the 5 and the potentially up to 12. So it does add that complexity. But yeah, I don't think I can add more than that. I think you're being given wise advice in your right ear while I was talking in your left there.
That's fine. Thank you very kindly. In which case, didn't the question be put to the panel that it endorses the proposed increase in the precept? I'll let James summarise if I've got it wrong.
No, thank you, Chair. Because of the particular situation with the Commissioner awaiting the government decision on precept flexibility, I think, in effect, what you're being asked to endorse in this case is that you endorse the Commissioner increases the precept by the maximum allowable without triggering a local precept referendum. So, depending on the government decision, that might be, well, up to £12, possibly £10, and if there's no flexibility, the £5 figure. So, rather than endorsing a figure, you're being asked to endorse that it's the maximum allowable without a local referendum.
But not more than 12.
But up to a maximum of £12.
Nothing complicated there then. Okay, well, on that basis of James's very articulate description, we put that to a vote, please, with a show of hands. Thank you. And that's all members present. Thank you. Thank you, James. Okay, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the Police, Fire and Crime Panel work programme, which James will introduce. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the standard report that comes to each meeting of the panel, setting out the latest versions of the work programme and also the responses to resolutions from previous panel meetings where some further action is required. So the latest version of the work programme is set out at the Appendix A, which is page 145 onwards, picking up on the earlier discussion under the minutes. The bullet point at the bottom of page 146, additional topics identified but not yet scheduled, where that says the impact of street drug dealing and the action being taken to address it in Northamptonshire. That will need to be amended to reflect the earlier amendment to the previous minutes. Otherwise, as I say, you have the second appendix, page 149 onwards, which sets out the responses provided to various previous resolutions, which are all shown as completed. So that's a positive position to report. I think happy to take any questions on the work programme, Chair, but otherwise it's over to the panel to take a view or whether that's still directs reflects its priorities, directs its capacity in the best way.
Thank you, James. Carolyn, then Councillor Keeble.
Thanks, James. I think it does. There's just the one bit missing is because we are expecting, aren't we, the finalised terms of reference for the review that we were they were asked to do, which I'm sure are coming at some point. And then it's from that, how does that fit into the kind of work programme? Because I'm sure as a panel we'd want an opportunity to go through that in some detail, particularly the findings of anything and the recommendations. So I think that somehow needs to fit in, but I don't know the timeline for when that's all going to fit with the review and everything.
So it's been indicated, but it is only a very light indication that it would be in the springtime in terms of something coming back to the panel. And I think that realistically, given the panel's interest and obviously the information that has been presented to you previously, we will obviously, when that review is ready, we will make sure that it's added to an agenda. So it may not feature specifically on a dated meeting at this time, but we will obviously make sure that it does feature on an agenda going forwards, and we'd ensure that members had advanced sight of that in the usual way to ensure that they'd had a chance to properly read and review before that meeting took place.
Councillor Keeble.
Thank you. What I wanted to deal with, obviously, the issue about the impact of the drug-related crime, because from our discussions, what this largely arose out of was the fact that we had statistics for a whole range of different crimes, and we had nothing that actually covered drug crime or knife crime, and there was that complex of crimes that particularly affected my my ward and the centre of town, but particularly we'd had a number of incidents in my ward. There was obviously heated discussion about whether this was operational matter or not. But actually the issue was that the information was from the Commissioner's office, from the scrutiny of the figures and the performance of the police. And there was one area where there was just, in my view, the information missing, and that was about this crime area. Now, it does actually happen to be an area of acute concern in my ward. There was another knife-related crime just recently involving a young person, and I think people do want to see some answers to, or at least some statistics, some level of scrutiny of what's happening. So I would hope that that could actually be timetabled in somewhere. I appreciate there are other areas which are very important, which haven't yet been scheduled, including obviously vulnerable adults and serious antisocial behaviour. But quite a few of these have actually there've been stats for them. They've been in the public debate, and they're also looked at by some of the local authority services. The one about the drug-related crime is very substantial, and I do think it has a big impact, for example, on the regeneration of the town centre and other areas, as well as obviously having a terrible impact on people's lives. So I would hope that we could actually get it agendaed in, during the course of 2026, which I don't think is an unreasonable request, and it's not an unreasonable time scan. I actually thought we were going to just get figures and a report back quite quickly, but obviously that's not been the case.
I'll let James come in to respond to Councillor Cleaver, then Andy.
Can I just...
Or do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to... I think that what the difficulty is, Sally, is when you record crimes are recorded as drug-related crimes or other crimes. What is not recorded, and this is the really difficulty with what you're getting at, I think, is that assault over there was a result of people being high on drugs. That correlation is not recorded in the figures. So it's what you're asking is dead right, but I'm not. It's more how they're going to get the figures to explain that. How many drug gangs are beating up and stabbing people in your community won't be recorded in that way. It's about 3 or 4 sets of figures being looked at and then explained, but somebody needs to explain to you the correlation between all that. I understand what you're after, but...
Chair, can I just come back on this? Because I completely understand that point, and that is what we had quite a lot of debate about previously. And it's one of the reasons why, if you're scrutinising the operation, then it's important to scrutinise the reality of it. And sometimes, if you take, for example, the grooming gangs up north, those weren't identified as anything for a long time, were they? And it's an issue here that if you have a particular complex on the ground, which is young people, knife crime, drugs, then you need to understand what's happening and you have to find a response. And I thought the presentation that we had about the crime stats was very interesting, and it was also obviously very well researched and very well thought through. It's just that it didn't relate to one of the biggest crime problems in my area, and which affects a lot of people in the centre of Northampton. And I think if we're going to scrutinise, we have to look at the reality of people's lives. So I completely understand it's a complex area, and it involves
what we would then need to scrutinise.
And it involves thinking through quite carefully the categories and how they're recorded and how you then interpret that data. But unless you do that, I don't see how you get to the root of the problem, which is so visible in my patch, so visible, and sadly just keeps on coming back.
James has got the notes and the reports here from before. I'll bring him in.
So thank you, Chair. So a few points. Firstly, as I think has been referenced, scrutiny of this topic by the panel would need to be directed at the Commissioner rather than operational. So it would perhaps be in the sense of what is the Commissioner doing to ensure, is the Commissioner satisfied that things are happening as they need to, enough is being done. Secondly, the work programme is never fixed, so I think it's entirely reasonable that the panel's identified topics that it would like to look at without having scheduled them yet. Those topics can be moved up, moved down, moved out completely, depending on your priorities. And similarly, where a topic has been given a set date, if something comes along and the panel thinks, well, this is more important than the thing we've already scheduled, then swap them over, move something in, move something out. Yeah, I think also there is scope for the panel to use more than one approach to deal with something. And I'm thinking there, for example, if the panel wanted to ask for some information, a written briefing to be provided to it as soon as that could be done on a particular topic, then that might satisfy the panel, that might answer all the questions you have, or it could be used as a stepping off point for identifying and focusing further scrutiny. So it's not the case that the only way the panel has to deal with something is to have an item at a panel meeting.
Councillor Keeble?
Well, could I propose that we have it as an item on the June agenda, and we look at, we get some scoping of how the Commissioner might scrutinise the police forces, the police operations in this complex of crimes, because it seemed to me, judging from the presentation we had, there's more than the capacity in the office to be able to think through, to look at the stats and find a way of interpreting them and analysing them, and providing the information. It is a major issue, because if there are serious trends here locally about violent crime and knife crime, so it is perfectly right to ask for the information in that area, and then we could go on from there. But if it's not an item on the agenda, my experience is that things tend to get lost in the undergrowth.
Can I just add something to that? Because
Microphone, Pauline.
Sorry. I think we need to remember as well, just listening to you, Councillor Keeble, and my colleague here, Andy, who was saying that the reporting requirements may be different. So national requirements in terms of policing and what's required in terms of them reporting on the work that's going on is, you can almost see that it's going to be different in a lot of areas in terms of what's driven locally, what's impacting local people, what matters to local people. Am I making sense? Yeah. And so you have to have, I think we can put that work remit forward as a working group, but at the same time, I think we need to be open that we might not get what we're looking for, and we may need to look at how we approach things differently at local level. Yeah, so it could be a discussion that will kickstart something new, rather than we might not get what we think we should be getting or expecting to get from.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, but if you don't look, then you don't even start to find.
Absolutely, I agree.
I mean, we have to ask the questions and try to scope out what is going on there.
Absolutely.
And then, from there one can go on. But if you don't ask a question, you don't get the answer.
No, and I totally agree, but I just... As he was talking, and from a community development point of view, I understand that like a lot of stuff go on, and statutory and voluntary sector services work completely differently, as we know. But with joined up thinking, we can almost get to the root cause of what we need to be implementing to get the services to be delivered at an appropriate level that is necessary for our communities. So, yeah.
Thank you all. To James, to sum up.
Thank you, Chair. So, I think I I haven't heard anything that suggests otherwise than that the panel's happy with the report, the responses to previous resolutions part of this report. What it sounds as if the panel is saying, well, there's certainly been a proposal that the issue of drug-related crime, serious drug-related crime, including knife crime, and forgive me if I've not recalled that correctly, is put on the agenda for the June panel meeting. And I think what we should and can absolutely do to support that is to have a conversation in advance between the panel and the Commissioner's office about this is what the panel wants to look at, this is what it wants to achieve. How do we do that, taking account of the points raised about how things are recorded and not recorded? So yeah, it would be problematic if the panel sought to do this without any preliminary work, any preliminary discussion with the Commissioner's people for precisely the reasons raised. But that's not the way the panel and the Commissioner work together anyway.
Okay. Any other members? Anything to add to the work programme? Mr. Kellett?
Yeah, Chair. I don't know whether I can put it forward, but I think legal costs and civil cases are really impacting Northamptonshire, and maybe we could put that on the work programme to see how the Commission is going to deal with looking at them issues.
I'll bring Sarah in on that because I think this was addressed on the panel pre-meet the other day. Sarah.
I think the reality is, obviously, if we are talking about individual cases, it's very difficult for the panel to scrutinise those because it's outside of its remit. I think in terms of kind of almost like budget monitoring and updates on that position, I think it can be incorporated as part of that, which obviously I would expect that the Commissioner's office would bring back to this panel in any event.
Just for clarity, I wasn't talking about individuals. I was talking about scoping in general. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Point noted for the minutes.
Sorry, Chair. What the work programme should also include is picking up on the monitoring officer's point about when something on the outcomes of the independent review is ready to come to the panel, it will.
Yes.
And you already clarified that the work programme is fluid and can be added to as we go along. So if everyone's happy with that. Has anybody else got any other points to add before we move on and sum that up? So that's to endorse the outcome subject to the amendments and changes we've just noted, and the panel notes the updates and responses to resolutions. Are we all good to show of hands on that? So, thank you. All members, thank you. Okay, the next item on today's agenda is the Police, Fire and Crime Panel meeting dates for 26, 27, and back over to James to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. So hopefully this is straightforward. It's normal practice for the panel at the February meeting to agree the proposed meeting dates for the year ahead. The proposed meeting dates are set out at paragraph, when I can find it. Well, they're set out in the report clearly. Thank you, members. Yes, 151, paragraph 3.1. The report explains the rationale for how those have been chosen, the key factors. That's paragraph 6.1. They follow statutory requirements, which principally relates to timing of review of the Commissioner's proposed precepts. They follow established practice, and they've been shared with both WNC and NNC to coordinate with their draft meeting schedules. Where what's proposed here does differ from previous years is that it's proposed that panel meetings for 26, 27 start at 2 p.m. rather than 12:30 p.m. The 12:30 p.m. start time was something of an anomaly in any case, and the main point in the rationale for starting at 2 p.m. is it would hopefully assist members to manage your other schedules better and allow you a break after morning meetings. So hopefully this is all straightforward, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for anyone? Carolyn? No?
That's fine, thank you.
Are we all good?
We're all good.
Well, we'll move that one straight to a vote then, to note the contents of the report and the proposed changes to the meeting time, the dates in the report and the change to 2 p.m. With a show of hands, everyone. Thank you. That's unilateral. Thank you. Unanimous. Okay. And lastly, there's no urgent business that have been raised in advance of the meeting. And the date of the next panel meeting is the 9th of April, but that one is at 12:30. Is that correct? 12:30, just for clarity.
Yes.
And that brings the meeting to a close.
Yeah, and just to confirm, as neither of the proposed precepts were subject to a veto, the panel meeting, the reserve meeting on 18th of February won't take place.
Okay, and that does conclude the end of the meeting. Thanks, members.